It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, a rock star in education, considered, I think, the 14th most influential educator in the United States by one evaluation. It's always exciting when you have a faculty member who can throw off things like, yeah, I coined a phrase, culturally relevant pedagogy. Just coined it. So we're so happy and excited for Professor Ladson-Billings to join us today. You should follow her on Twitter, especially during the TV show Scandal. Incredibly exciting posts during the Scandal shows. Deep interrogation of Scandal, the TV show. It's awesome. So without further ado, somebody who's doing some pioneering research today in hip-hop and science education with Christopher Emden out at Columbia. So let's give it up for Gloria Ladson-Billings.
Good afternoon. Let me make sure I'm on. Yeah, I am. Good afternoon. Thank you so much again, Catherine, Dang, Aaron, your whole committee for inviting me. I think this is a really important gathering to have. I'm saying that because as a graduate student at Stanford, I didn't have it. And it was like, what am I supposed to be doing? Go be a TA. So typically when I've done this talk, I've talked a lot about my own work, but this time I really wanted to talk about your work and what you need to be thinking about. How many people in the room are brand new? Great. How many people in the room are TAs? Okay. How many people are PAs or RAs? Okay. So if you are a PA or RA, I'm going to challenge you to be thinking about questions that you want to ask, because I really did gear this towards TAs, but because I've been both, I do have a sense of the responsibility for both of them and some of the things that come up when you're a project assistant or research assistant. As Aaron mentioned, I'm doing this work with youth culture, specifically hip hop, but I love popular culture. My cognate at Stanford was in anthropology, and I do work in urban ethnography in complex society. So I don't go off in a remote place, you know, please, really. You know, I think roughing it is being stuck in the Palmer House in Chicago, right? You know, it's funny, my own kids used to complain because I wouldn't take them camping. Why don't we ever go camping? I'm like, I work too hard to go home for 2 weeks. I don't want to be in the woods. I want to be. So one of my favorites over time in popular culture has been David Letterman. I love, even if I have to get up in the morning early, I try to see the top 10 list. I always think it's pretty funny. So I'm using that approach, giving you a kind of top 10 for TAs. So we'll start with 10. Number 10, remember whose course it is. This is not, even though you might have all responsibilities, you got to do the syllabus, you have to do the teaching, you have to do the grading, you have to meet with students. It's still not your course. It is assigned to someone. Someone wrote the course requirements that took it through the programs committee at the university to get it on the books. That was not you. So someone is either not teaching it because they have grants and they're bought out and they just don't have the time. Someone is not teaching it because they have some administrative responsibility. So it's not your course. You are the teaching assistant. I'll insert a little thing here about PAs and RAs. It's not your research project. And it's really important that you know who owns the data. I cannot tell you how many times we have had an issue where someone is out collecting data and now they want to write about it. You're not on the IRB, other than to say we're going to have PAs, and that's a kind of generic categorization. So you need to establish up front, either as a TA or PA, RA, where your responsibility lies, right? So if you're a PA or RA collecting data, you can be given permission to use data for something you want to do, but you can't assume that it's yours. My first years in graduate school, first 3 years I was a TA. My final year I was a RA for what was then called Far West Labs, now it's called West Ed, in San Francisco. I had a project that I did all the work, literally. I drove up to this remote little community on the other side of the Altamont Pass, and trust me, if you know California, the coast is different from inland. And, but it wasn't my data. I was collecting it for the people who did it. So you want to get that clear. When you don't know, ask. There is a point at which there's an assumption that, oh, I know. Or we try to fake it because you want to look like you know because you're working with people who assume you know, particularly in the case of students. But if you don't know, the correct response is always, I don't know, I'll find out. But don't assume. Like any other complex institution, there's a whole bunch of rules associated with certain things. And they may not make any sense to you, but at some level, somebody figured out, well, we need to have this particular rule. I've been here at the university 22 years. As a part of my tenure here, I was on the athletic board for 7 years, and I was the Big Ten faculty rep. So I had a big rule book from the NCAA and another rule book from the Big Ten. And, you know, people would say, oh my gosh, you know, they have all these crazy rules in the NCAA. It just doesn't make any sense. The truth, we have a snack rule. There is literally a snack rule. How many snacks you can give them and the parameters of that snack. Now, that sounds really silly. But the truth of the matter is there's a reason for that rule. Because the two overriding rules in the NCAA are, one, do not exploit the athlete. Two, do nothing to get an unfair advantage. So somebody obviously said to an athlete, oh, let's have a snack. And here comes a filet mignon, baked potato, lobster tails. And so now you got athletes saying, or recruits saying, well, I'm going to that school. That's an unfair advantage. So even though you may encounter a rule that doesn't make sense to you, it's probably there because somebody did something that made them make the rule. And a lot of the rules that you will have to deal with both, I think, as TAs and PAs and RAs, are boundaries. You know, how close you get to students in your interactions with them, how close you get to people out in the field when you are collecting data. There's a reason why we want to have a separation, a boundary separation between our students or the people we are collecting data from. Number 8, embrace the here and now. Okay? Yeah, you used to be there. I know. Oh, it was every day, it was sunny. Oh, it was this, it was that. You know. You here. You here. Now, here's the funny thing. When I went to Stanford, I was just the opposite, right? I left the East Coast. I'm like, when is it going to snow? When are we going to get? There's no fall. There's no. You're here. Nobody make you come here. You made a choice. The reason I say this is because one of the things that often happens in our interactions, and we have a long, hard winter. But you don't need to push that onto the students. The students don't need to hear about how in your house in Maui, how you go out. They don't need to hear that. So you made a decision to come here for some reason. Embrace it. Enjoy it. Don't make everything about the comparisons about where you used to be. Because you're not there anymore. You're here. You also have to remember what's developmentally appropriate. This is directed specifically at those of you who are TAs. Because what happens is you're going to be taking courses yourself. Some of you have already taken some courses. And you get really excited about what you learned. And so then now you think, I'm going to put this in my course. No. There's a reason why they're undergraduates and you're graduates. And I can tell you almost every time one of my TAs have done is blown up in their face. Oh, they hated that reading and they were so upset. Because they're not there yet. It's not the place for them. So you have to be really careful about what you select and what you choose to expose undergraduates to. Think about where you were as an undergraduate. I say this to school people all the time. 13-year-olds can only think 13-year-old thoughts and make 13-year-old decisions. What's a 13-year-old thought? I'm not taking no algebra. That's hard. Okay? That's the way a 13-year-old is supposed to think. So you cannot presume that these 19 to 22-year-olds, for the most part, and we do have some non-traditional students, but that they can handle philosophers and Derrida and, Lacan. They're just not there. So be really mindful of what you are choosing for them to read and understand, the kind of examples. Aaron pointed out that I'm doing a lot of work in hip hop. Well, hip hop to me is KRS-One. Come on, yeah, you must learn. Hip hop to me is Mos Def. Nicki Minaj and that Anaconda need to go somewhere. That needs to go somewhere. But my love of 80s and 90s hip hop has no relevance to the young people I encounter. It's history to them. So be careful about what it is you are choosing to expose them to. Number 6, check in early and adjust. And what I mean by that is the one little leverage that students feel like they have over their professors and their TAs is that evaluation form, right? So they might not say anything, be seething about something, and then you get zinged at the end. And the truth of the matter is, departments pay attention to those. We literally read those evaluations and what students have to say about you. Because people are paying their money, they want to get a quality education. But what I found is if you check in early enough and let the students be heard, even if you don't make big adjustments, because some of the stuff they want to do, you can't do. But if they get heard and you can adjust things, some things, they don't get to dictate everything, they will respond to you in a much more positive way. I'll say the same thing for PAs and RAs. You might think, oh, I'm just doing my job just fine. I'm doing great. But you need to check in with whoever is supervising the project. Have any questions? Is this what you're looking for? Is there something I should be changing? That kind of thing. So with my students, now if you are a TA, typically your department is going to want to do a semester evaluation. And you'll have to do that, but my suggestion is maybe do something less formal with them. I literally have the students just take a sheet of paper, fold it in half, make 2 columns, pluses and wishes. On the plus side, what's the stuff you like that we're doing? Wish we did, you know, enjoyed it, learned a lot, was fun. The other side is wishes. What are things you wish we would do or you wish we would not do? And then, again, it's a kind of non-threatening, but it's a way to get them to think, you know, to share with you what's on their minds. And you can then come back and say, here are the things people seem to really like. Or what if it turns out that stuff that people say they really like, some other people say, I wish we wouldn't do that anymore. So you help them understand that even within this group, we're not all on the same page. Just articulating their concerns will go a long way in having them see you as having heard them, that they matter. I had a statistics professor at Stanford. He was horrible. He was like that man on that first slide, you know. I wrote the textbook, and he did. But he was awful. He never looked at us, ever. He spent his entire time at the board doing equations. And within the first few weeks, people just stopped coming. They just read the syllabus. They taught themselves as best they could, turned in their homework. And it was one of these things where the one time everybody came was the time before the final when we did the course evaluation. The room was packed. Because people were so angry and they wanted to express that anger. So he never checked in with us. He didn't really care. So you want to make sure that you check in early and then make what adjustments you can. Again, you can't give them everything they want. You know, I remember one time, one of the complaints for our folks over in C&I was that the CCBC, the Children's Cooperative Book Center, that they couldn't take the books at home. Okay, it's the CCBC, a non-circulating library. Okay, did you read the title of the place? We should be able to take the books home. Okay, it's a non-circulating library. You go and you look at the books. So some things you cannot change. And the best I think you can do is help them understand why some things are not possible, but you've heard them on that. Okay, number 5, communicate clearly and regularly. One of the great things I think about my own experience is I started out teaching in middle school. Jesus, help. It was not my choice. I wanted to teach high school students. I wanted to teach 11th grade U.S. history. It's my subject area, love it, and 11th graders are like the best people on the face of the earth. I love them. 9th graders, come on, y'all. We've been fighting over them for how long? They was in junior high school, and then those people figured out how to get them out the building. So now they're in high school. Now the high school people do it. I go to cities all the time. Come and see our freshman center. Okay, why y'all got them all over here? We all know why. Nobody wants to be bothered with them. 10th grade, look at the data. That is the year of the greatest dropout. It's when kids figure out, man, this thing is a lot harder, a lot more difficult, I just can't do this. 12th grade, that's a hologram. You think it's a person there, but they really not there. They at the next thing, especially the second semester, 12th grade. I would have some of them, they would kill you. Well, you know, I done turned my stuff in. I've been admitted to university so-and-so. I'm like, oh, don't you know they got telephones over there? I can call those people. I can let them know you're not a very nice person. But 11th grade, for whatever reason, they kind of get it. And 11th grade, it's like, oh, this is serious. You know, I got to get my act together. I got to take my college boards. I got to do this. I got to do this. I mean, they're just wonderful. But it turns out everybody realizes they're wonderful. So as a brand new person in the school district of Philadelphia, there wasn't no jobs over there. They sent me to 8th grade because of my U.S. history credential. These are like the worst people in the world. I mean, the polar opposite. 8th grade. People say, oh, I love middle school. You lying. You are lying. You are delusional. Okay. And what I didn't understand about working with these young people is you have to be so explicit in your communication with them. I didn't understand, for example, that because of where they are in their lives, everything is important to them or not important. Literally, they go from hot to cold. For those of you who were science teachers or know anything about science, know about this notion of metamorphosis. 8th grade, larvae. That's the stage you at. Very, very ugly. Okay? They're not an attractive group. Now, I can give you empirical data on that. And having had 4 kids, I can tell you that it's just an ugly period. Because, you know, you got Amazon women and midget men, and you know, she got a face full of pimples and 2 pigtails and a 38 double D bra, right? Like, ooh, this is not a good look, right? It's larvae. It's going to be a butterfly, trust me. But they'll be in 11th grade, right? You're gonna be like, oh, you are so handsome. Oh, she's so cute, right? So it's not all together. And one of the things that you know at this level is that everything is an issue, right? Like, well, what's wrong with you? She looking at me. And that's the issue. She looking at me. And so with these young people, you have to communicate really clearly and regularly. I want to tell you it is the same at every level of teaching, because what teaching middle school taught me is that there are some commonalities in teaching. You think you have to give the directions 5 times at middle schoolers? I have to give it at grad school. They just frame it a little bit differently. We were wondering, no, you wasn't wondering. You ain't listening, you don't know. But you have to have that same approach that you can write it, you can send it, but you still have to be open to the fact somebody's going to say, I don't know what you're asking for. So you have to communicate clearly and regularly to them. And what cracks me up is when I see TAs who are striding about X, Y, or Z, but as students, they don't do it themselves. I had a student, I was a supervisor for a young woman when I was at Stanford, and she turned in stuff late all the time. I mean, she never turned anything in on time. I go out to observe her at her high school. I'm sitting in the room, and she says, and I will accept nothing late. It must be on time. I mean, I had a Scooby-Doo moment. If anybody in the world should be accepting late things, it's you. So we want to make sure we do really clear communicate and regular. And at some point, you just have to be redundant and say, I know I said this the other day, but I really want to make sure that everybody's clear. And still somebody's going to ask you later, well, I didn't get that. Okay. Number 4, your problems, your issues are yours. When I was department chair, I really lucked out because I came into that role at a time when the vice provost for faculty development really thought we should do a better job in helping to educate our chairs. A lot of times what we had been doing and probably have gone back to doing, is somebody gets elected chair, they get 1 day of orientation, and then they're on their own. But I happened to come in during a time when we did a week-long orientation, 8 to 5, and it was wonderful. And I'll never forget that when the HR people came to talk to us, they said to us, when your faculty come into your office upset, angry, with the words, well, you did so-and-so and so-and-so, or you didn't do so-and-so and so-and-so, always remember, it's not about you. It's about them. So similarly, the problems you're grappling with, they're your problems. They're not the students' problems. They're not the institution's problems. They're not the weather's problems. They're yours. And why this is important is because I've had too many undergraduates come to me saying, well, I could never meet with my TA because he or she said they had a paper due, so they don't have time. He or she said they have to do X, Y, and Z for a class, so they don't have time. No, you're being paid to have time. You're being paid to manage your time in a way that you give the appropriate attention and time to the students. You got a paper due. You want to know how many papers I got due? Faculty are always on the clock. We always have papers due. We're always writing, but that doesn't absolve us of the responsibility to give full attention to students. So you don't want to develop this reputation that you don't have time for students. You know, I've had undergraduates tell me that my TA said I'm only getting paid 25%, and that's not the student's problem or issue. So your problems are yours. You have to meet the students where they are. In some ways, this relates to the developmentally appropriate thing, but our students come with an array of experiences. You can't beat them up because they grew up in Rhinelander, okay? They didn't ask to grow up in Rhinelander.
Well, there's nothing wrong with Rhinelander.
Okay, there you go, see? There is nothing wrong with Rhinelander. But I think there is a tendency for us to say, well, if you didn't have this big city experience, if you weren't in a diverse setting, then you don't know what you're talking about. Or you don't, you know. It's funny because we will tell them that when they interact with young people, they're supposed to meet students where they are. Well, we don't meet them where they are. And you can walk into a class and assume, because everybody is racially white, that they all have had the same experience. Not true. People who have taken classes with me know I'm a real film junkie. I'm always watching film. I assign them in my classes. I love them as texts, as ways to portray a lot of different things. And so students often will suggest films to me. Oh, you ought to see this, you ought to see that. A student suggested to me that I should see Being Bucky Badger. And I'm like, okay, you done confused my love of film and my love of sports with some notion that I care about the mascot. You know? I don't want to see any Bucky Badger, right? So I didn't say that to them, but I was kind of, okay. So I kind of blew it off. But I was down in the bookstore, and they were on sale for like $5. And I know the film had shown at the Wisconsin Film Festival. So I said, you know, I'm going to buy this film. Bought the film. A few weeks go by. I finally decide, I take a little break. Let me look at this film. Fabulous film. Fabulous film. It's all about the people inside that mascot, because there were like 5 Buckies. There's not one. Oh, is that a secret? Oh, okay. There's only one Bucky. It's only one Bucky. Okay. But no, there are like 5 students who do Bucky because of the different sports, 20 sports that we have. But it was a story of their lives. And there was a young man who said, you know, I sit in these classes at the university and I realize that all of these people, their parents paying their tuition, or, you know, they came from New York or whatever, you know, and every weekend I have to go home. You know, they talk about, I'm gonna have to get a job this summer. And he says, I've had a job since I was 5 years old. I live on a farm. I have to go in and muck stables and cow barns, you know. I don't have this same experience. There's another young man in the film, his father had early onset Alzheimer's. And he says, I have to go home on the weekends. You know, I love to be out here partying, you know, having, you know, getting drunk like everybody else. But when I'm not on duty as Bucky, I have to go home to give my mother a relief. And they literally showed him with his dad, and they're sitting in the living room, and he's saying, Dad, Dad, and his father's not responding. And then he says, Bruce, and his father turns, and he says, see, I can't even call my dad Dad. He responds to Bruce because that's who he was as in the workplace. So I'm telling you this because if you just saw these kids, you know, we quickly put people in categories. Oh, white, middle class, Wisconsin, da, da. Not so. So even in a classroom full of all white students, you're going to have variety. And you're going to have people who have had a different set of experiences, and you have to meet them where they are. Okay, number 2. Please practice some self-care. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And if you're still taking courses, you're in the fun part. Okay? You know how when you start a race, you know, everybody there, you're at the thing, you got your little billboard, and you're like, oh, wow, it's all these people, this will be fun, right? And it is fun when you just start out. But then when it stretches out, and you're out there by yourself, okay, that's the post-prelim time. And you're like, where is everybody? Oh my God, am I going the right way? What? Oh, I'm just so tired. I wish I just had somebody to talk to. Okay. So you got to take care of yourself. And I like this thing, this Best Me self-care, the breathe awareness, you know, just realizing that you can't start to hyperventilate in the midst of this stuff. Just chill, relax. Eat with love. This is a place, if you are new to Wisconsin, go on and buy that next size pair of jeans. I'll tell you right now. Go and get that next big shirt. My youngest son, and all my boys grown up in California, my youngest son came to visit when we first moved here, and he was a college student. And I was a little nervous about having him come because, you know, I didn't know what I was going to do with him. We were new here. I didn't want to push him off onto my students, but he's a really social guy. So he, you know, within a couple days, he was already going out. He was hitting State Street. People were calling, you know. So I said to him, so Kevin, how do you like Wisconsin? He said, oh man, this place is great. This is a kid that grew up in Palo Alto, California. And he said, this place is great. And I said, really? Well, what do you like about it? He said, look, you could eat red meat. You could drink hard liquor. You could drive drunk. He said, these people are fat. Proud of it. I love this place. And when you think of somebody who grew up in Palo Alto, where if you order a steak, the entire restaurant will go. You know, because if it's not vegan, you know, organic, you know, microbiotic, it's not appropriate, right? Where hard liquor. Do they sell hard liquor in Palo Alto? No, you can have wine, you know. So literally coming from a place in which there are sort of narrow rules about who and how to be, to a place where people pretty much like, let's let it hang out. You all hang out. I took him to Woodman's and he was like, who needs this much soda? Like, you know, just rolls and rolls of soda, right? So you have to eat with love. Lucky for you, Madison has some great places to eat. But at some point, you know, how you end up with more month than you have money, you know, near the end, where you can't go out to a restaurant, you need to make good choices about what you're eating and taking care of yourself. You need to sleep in peace. And what that means for you may be different. You know, my mom, the first time she came to visit us when we lived in California, my mother spent her entire life, from the time she was 5 till she died at almost 90, in not just Philadelphia, West Philadelphia. I mean, my mother and father, they thought if you left West Philly, it was like the dragons are out there, right? You can't go out of there. But she came to visit us, and, you know, we lived in this really nice, serene place, and I said to her the next morning after her first night, I said, oh, how'd you sleep? She said, oh, terrible. I said, well, is a problem with the mattress? No, your mattress is fine. It's so quiet, right? Because this is a woman who lived 1/2 block away from the subway elevated train. That's sleeping in peace for her. So you got to figure out what constitutes sleeping in peace for you and get enough sleep. Most of us are indeed sleep deprived. I know I am, because I don't have sense enough to go to bed. You know, I'm up all night, you know me in the social media. I got to tell y'all what's happening, right? What you gonna do unless I tell you this? So you do need to get enough sleep. Think gratitude. I don't care how cold it gets here. I don't care how much ice is on this hill. I don't care how many of your friends are now down at San Padre Island and you're not there. You're not somewhere digging ditches. You're not stuck on the square, homeless. When I was in college, I remember calling home to my father, wrong person to get when you need money. I was hoping to get my mother, but my father answered. And he said, what are you calling for? I said, well, Dad, I actually could use a little money. He said, really? Is your tuition paid? I'm like, well, yeah. Your room and board? Uh-huh. So you got a meal ticket, right? I'm like, uh-huh. You got toothpaste, deodorant, and sanitary products. I'm like, uh-huh. He said, what are you calling me about? He's basically saying you need to be grateful, because there's a whole lot of people that don't have anything. And so be grateful. Embrace, like I said, embrace the here and now. Embrace here. You're going to make some wonderful friends here. You're going to make some lifelong friends here. So enjoy that. Mindful meditation, basically whatever you need to do to keep your head together. For some of you, that's a faith commitment. For others of you, it may be some practice of yoga or meditation, whatever it is. Because we are more than just physical bodies. There is a, quote, spirit in us that we need to take care of in some ways. So however you do that, do that. And then engage in some joyful acts. Have some fun. This is your last time to be paid for doing basically nothing. Come on, y'all. This ain't no real job, you know. My parents used to say to me all the time, when are you going to get a real job? You know, and I actually left teaching after 10 years in my family. It was scandalous in my family. She done left that good job. You know, they had insurance, benefits, and everything. She had lost her mind because they saw that as being a kid. And part of it is being a kid. You know, you're around young people all the time. Your work is engaging in thought. Yeah, real. Right, okay. It's a wonderful line in the book Mama Day by Gloria, where these women in a rural community are talking about the fact that this young man has come back. He's a graduate student, and he's an ethnographer. And these two women are saying, yeah, can you believe Maddie's son had come back here talking about he's doing field work? That boy ain't never spent one day in a field in his life. You know? And so there may be folks at home who are saying, okay, he's goofing off again. You know, he done gone off to graduate school. But have some fun. Okay, number one, respect the infrastructure. What do I mean by that? Oops, did I go back? I lost my thingy. And that's actually a good. Professors, yeah, we come and go. We're a dime a dozen. Trust me. If we put up a position announcement, PVL for a professor, 100 people will apply. That's just how many, they're out there. But good secretaries, custodians, all the people who keep this thing going are really priceless. So just because you're a graduate student, just because you're the TA or the PA, you got a little office you sharing with somebody, don't get all caught up in your importance. Be kind to these folks. I have a personal reason for being really kind to those folks. My dad was a janitor in a college. And I know what it feels like to be totally invisible, where if you didn't do your job, the whole thing will come to a screeching halt. If you didn't clean those toilets, if you didn't get a gum off the floor, if you didn't dump the trash, it would make an environment that it was unbearable. Similarly, the secretaries. I learned quickly as a brand new teacher, be nice to the secretary. That's the person turning the payroll in, y'all. She can say, oops. I don't know what happened, your stuff didn't go in. Basically, is you've been treating me like dirt, and I have a way to come back at you. So you want to respect that infrastructure. You want to realize that these are people who have basically put down roots here. They raised their families here. They're going to be here when you leave. And so they have an investment in the institution too, in a different way. But make sure you treat them with kindness, be caring, be respectful. So those are my top 10. Do we have time for any questions, Dang or Catherine? You do? Okay, great. So anybody with questions? Something you think I might have left off? So I was like scratching my head trying to think. Say that again? All the great things about Rhinelander. Okay, good. I actually, we have something on campus for new faculty and administrators called the Wisconsin Idea Seminar. And a busload of faculty, imagine this, right? You got a busload of faculty that drives around the state for a week. Yikes. And essentially what we do is we look at the connection between the rest of the state, because the Wisconsin idea is at the boundaries of the university, the boundaries of the state. So I've gone to Rhinelander, and you're right, it's very nice. So I've been to all these different places. Any other questions or something you might have felt like I missed? Yes?
What is your blog about Scandal? What's the URL?
I don't do this Scandal. I don't blog them. I just tweet. I tweet Scandal. I just tweet Scandal, yeah. At GJ Ladson.
Very entertaining. Like, don't watch the show. Like, follow it.
Anything else? I do have a blog, though, called Smart and Black. that usually 2 or 3 times a week I will post something. So, yes.
Do you have any favorite memorable experience when you TA?
Oh gosh. Let me think. So I started out as a TA in the Stanford Teacher Ed program. Not all the experiences are good ones. I had one where, this is let you know how long ago. I was a TA during the time of the murder of Harvey Milk and Mayor Moscone, and on the heels of that, the mass suicide of the people from the People's Temple in British Guyana, and almost all those people were from the Bay Area. And I went to supervise a student teacher in social studies, and he was teaching about the Spanish-American War. And I'm like, excuse me? Do you know what else is happening? And it wasn't him. It was his cooperating teacher who said he had to stay there. He wanted to bring up the issues that, was bubbling up with students. So I'm thinking about that in conjunction with what's now going on in Ferguson, where I've seen at least one piece saying that is it Elmsville or Ellensville? I can't remember the town. There's a town near there where the teachers have been admonished not to teach about Ferguson, not to discuss it. So I just found that really, really odd, very, very strange to be in that environment. Yes?
You've given us a lot of advice today, and I just have kind of at the end of your graduate school program training and transitioning into that faculty role, do you have any words of wisdom for students kind of at that place?
Who's making the transition to? Out of graduate school, and if they're thinking of a faculty position. I say this to my own graduate students all the time. The biggest disservice that we do to our graduate students here is that we make them think every place is like this. And I'm going to tell you, we are an anomaly among schools of education. There's just not a whole lot of places that do a good job of marrying theory and practice. So you can go to some universities and have great theory, but the faculty are not involved in practice at all. They hire adjuncts to do that, right? Or that goes somewhere else. There are other places where faculty do a lot of practice, but there's not a lot of deep thinking about the work. So I think in some ways we're really unusual in that we try to marry those things. We try to have our hands in both of those places. And resource-wise, we have a lot of resources. One of my earliest graduate students was a woman from St. Lucia. And she was miserable because October showed up. And so when she was ready to go, she said, oh, when she finished her degree, she said, oh, I can't wait to get back to the Caribbean. She was taking a job at the University of West Indies, Barbados, so perfect. And I told her, I said, you know what? You're going to miss this place. Oh, I won't. I just can't wait to get out of here. The following summer, I looked up from my desk. She was standing in my door. I said, what are you doing here? Oh, my God. They don't have any library resources. They don't have this. And So, yeah, we kind of do a disservice to folks. What I would say is one of the things you want to be thinking about in your career is in your grad school career is think about the kind of place you like to be. Not everybody wants to do this kind of intense, high research productivity kind of place. Some people do want to go to smaller liberal arts, more teaching institutions, but you need to know that about yourself, and you need to try to discover that. Some people want to go to a regional campus where they can really serve people in a particular community. So one of your jobs for yourself will be trying to figure out where would I really like to go. A lot of times students will ask me to write letters of recommendation for them, and I look at the list of schools that they're applying to, and I'm thinking, well, these are not commensurate. This job is nothing like this job. So really trying to figure out where's the best fit for me is something that I hope you will do as you think about your transition. And I do recognize that by the time you're finished, you're in debt, you're tired, you just want a job. But that's a bad way to go about it. You really want to figure out where is the place that will support your work. And not every place is capable of it. My first job, and I call it a job, was at Santa Clara University because I was place-bound. I had kids in high school. Rule in my house, and I set this rule, was everybody gets to go to their high school, 9th through 12th, because we moved enough, you know. So you get to go to your prom, you get to go to your class trip, you get to have your because I understand, you know, having been a high school and early adolescent teacher, I understand the power of the peer group. So I didn't want to move. Santa Clara, beautiful, you know, 12 miles away from my house. It was convenient, but it was not a job that could support my work. They didn't really care about that, the work I did. They just wanted me to teach those courses. So I end up here because it was very clear that this would be a place that would support my work. What happens when you take a job that doesn't support your work is you got two jobs, right? So I'm busy doing Santa Clara stuff during the day, and at night I'm over at Stanford in their libraries and trying to get, so it comes out of your hide. So you got to make sure it's a place that will support your work. Any questions? You're welcome.